another Holistyx Group webinar. I'm Arthur Milano, and I'm here with three of my cohorts here. Welcome to Mike Sternberg, Andrew Wolf, Cecilia Fung, and we're going to have an interesting conversation today. In particular, we're kind of naming this an AI activation challenge. And, you know, the real topic is where do your people fit in when it comes to AI adoption for organization, right? So as a setup, the question isn't whether or not AI will change your organization. It already has. The question really now is whether you'll lead that change, or is that change gonna lead you? I'm gonna just kind of jump right into the first question here. And my first question is to Mike. When it comes to AI, where do you see the role of human workers in, say, like 5 years?
Thanks, Arthur. Well, I don't really think there's a simple answer here. There's really a lot of nuance. I think there will be more of a continuum of approaches. So, for example, maybe on the far left, you might see companies or approaches that are totally AI centric. AI is all they use, there are no people involved. On the right, far right, you'll probably see approaches that are very human centric with very little AI. And then I think in the center, you're going to see a lot of companies, doing a combination of like human and AI augmentation. I think that on the left, the companies that try, or the approaches that try to be totally AI centric, they're going to have some mistakes, big mistakes, because they're going to be missing oversight. But I think there are cases where that's okay. Maybe you want to have a very AI-centric approach for military drones or AI soldiers. You don't want any people involved in that. I think also when you go the other way, the kind of the human-centric only approach, I think that's going to be, somewhat constrained, but there are always going to be people that want a car that perhaps is assembled only by people without any AI or automation, or there's always someone who wants a product that is, made by people. So there'll always be a market for that. And I think that in the middle is really the sweet spot. That's where humans are going to be augmented with AI. You're going to get the highest productivity, and there'll be some oversight to avoid, really horrible mistakes. And I think maybe another way is to think of it as, well, what's going to be the mix, right? I mean, if we have humans and AI working together, what's the percentages of each? And I think even that you're going to see a lot of different flavors. Maybe perhaps in an industry like healthcare, it'll be much more human centric. And maybe in an industry like insurance, maybe something like that can be more AI centric.
Really think it's a very interesting thing that we, define AI roles, which is what I think a lot of what you were talking about comes from, a conversation about how AI and people work together. So I love that. And, 5 years may actually be, this thing where it's like it may be a year.
Right.
But transitionally, Andrew, how do you build a transformation roadmap, keeping all of this in mind, that keeps the human workforce meaningfully involved?
Yeah, great topic. And for the very first, to connect it back to the last discussion, humans have to own the judgment and the context for whatever AI is doing. We talk about the human owning the loop, not just being in the loop. And this is true in roadmap development as well. So if you have a roadmap that's developed without human fingerprints on it, it's just a project plan. And no organization has ever been transformed with just a project plan. People have to do the transformation. And I think this goes counter to the instincts that a lot of organizations have, which is build a roadmap first and then figure out how to bring people along. And at Holistyx, we flip that idea and start with the people. You can't really drive a transformation journey without involving the people. And AI is no different from any of the other transformations we've gone through. So whether it's cloud or big data or mobile, mobile device transformations over the last couple of decades. AI is the same from an approach. At THG, we have a 5E framework that is how we think about developing a transformation roadmap. And it starts with envisioning, the first E. And before any initiative or use case is put onto that roadmap, we run a number of stakeholder envisioning sessions to understand from a number of different dimensions what the organization needs. Not just the C-suite, and what are the people at the different tiers and levels of the organization doing and when they work. Not just what tools do they use, but what are the tasks that they're doing. What's frustrating them, what pain points do they have today, and always tying that back to an ideal North Star vision. I think we're going to touch on that in some of the other topics today, but a North Star vision is necessarily one that doesn't change frequently over time. The North Star is useful for navigation because it doesn't move around the sky wherever you are on Earth. So your North Star vision shouldn't be changing. So the work you do must always connect back to that. So when you're building your roadmap, you start with that vision and work backwards from that. We use a number of different ways to prioritize what should go onto your roadmap and sequence it. So what should go on there, what should go on there first, second, third, and so on. And you can organize those into horizons and various things. But you start with a framework to evaluate things. And the DVF framework by IDEO is a wonderful one for evaluating innovative ideas and concepts. That's desirability, viability, and feasibility. So desirability, will people actually use whatever this change is, and how will they benefit from it? That's one of the first lenses that your roadmap has to have, but many people skip that. It's not negotiable for us. If your workforce and employees don't find these changes desirable, they will resist from the very beginning, and adoption is going to fail, regardless of how technically or operationally brilliant your change is. And as you go, you structure your roadmap across multiple horizons. We think in terms of kind of foundational innovation and transformation in those. And with respect to AI and the human piece of it, in that first horizon, the foundational one, we have AI fluency, and people need to be trained and understand AI, and they need to be listened to. And executives, on the other hand, need to be able to show quick and visible progress and wins. A lot of people are stuck in pilot purgatory today, where they have a huge number of pilots going on, but they're not actually making progress. And that's because they don't go through this prioritization exercise to say, does this pilot actually get me closer to my vision, or is it just an exercise to play with a new tool and see how cool it can be? So that's the first horizon, is developing that fluency. And the second one, where you're talking about innovation, is where you can contribute. You have your end users functioning as part of your solution design team. So they're not just being told the change, they're contributing to the change. Because you let them do that, they're going to be much more aligned with the change. They're going to feel like it's part of something that they helped create, and therefore they'll be much more likely to adopt it. And the third horizon, that transformation area, is where your champions, your most engaged people, should be leading. So for C-suite and leaders, you need to be active and visible in sponsoring the changes and transformation driven by AI in your organization. Not just watching it, not letting people hear about it in the news, but hearing it from you first. So we see a number of patterns and failed transformations, and it's not that the technology was wrong. Technology is actually the easy part. It's that the roadmap was built in isolation, maybe in a boardroom, and delivered to the workforce that never felt consulted. So the result there is compliance at best, and quiet resistance at worst. So.
Hey, Andrew, I wanted to just make a kind of a personal comment here. I'm totally, I think you're spot on with your comments. But the other day I was finishing my taxes, and I thought this year, I do my own taxes, and I thought this year, I'm going to use these cool generative AI tools to like do all the work for me and save all sorts of time.
Right.
So I went into a number of these tools. I started working on my taxes, and I would ask questions about how to do something on a particular form, and I would get an answer, and I would go, well, that doesn't sound right. So I would go research it and find out it was giving me a totally wrong answer, the opposite of what, I should do.
Right, right.
And
Wow.
so I had to go back and, read the IRS regulations. I mean, do a lot of work to find the
Yeah.
right answer. And then I figured out how to do it. And then I told the generative AI tool, you're totally wrong here. This is what each of these columns mean. This is what these numbers are. And the tool said, you're totally right. I was wrong. And then it completely reversed its description of what I should do.
Right.
So you got to be really careful. And without, keeping the
Yeah.
human in the loop, I might not be on this call. I might be in the IRS
I was
audit
getting
meeting or
audited.
something.
I have to add to that. I have to add to
Yeah.
that. Like it's related to the first question too. What would human workers look like in the next 5 years to 10 years? And there's a really good report I encourage everybody to read. It's the World Economic Forum. They published a future of work in the next 10 years back in 2025. In fact, there are a lot of angst out there about, am I going to lose my job because of AI? And Mike just brought up a very good scenario about current AI. There is still deficiency, right? You still need to check for accuracy, but it's gonna be improving. Imagine the next 10 years, right? Right now, we do need to check. In the future, we still do need to check. But the net based on the World Economic Forum report is there'll be a creation of 170 million jobs because of this AI boom. And out of that, probably 72 million would be displaced because of this change. You still have a net of, job increase, right? So the key issue here is not so much about, well, is it going to take away my job? Are there fewer jobs? The key issue is, are you reskilled? So there is a major need for executives and companies and everyone, government out there to, how do we reskill our population? How do we reskill our employees so that they could feel secure, they have new skills, and they can get into this AI world, right? So to the point of what Mike was making about the current issue with AI, in the future, there'll be 3 archetypes potentially coming out. One is the AI operator. They'll be operating, running the AI tool, right? The second one will be the AI collaborator. They'll be collaborating with AI, making sure the human in the loop and doing things better together, right? The third type is AI strategists. They'll define, provide guidance, and the setup of what the future direction should be. So I think there will be a lot of really positive aspects about future, but I think it's really dependent on how we actually reskill our population, our employees.
Yeah, I think that to expand just briefly on that too, that lives in the space of like every job eventually will be an AI or AI tethered job, right? So reskilling is a great place, and honestly kind of pivots to another great question I'm going to ask you, Cecilia. If we embrace the people at the helm concept that Andrew mentioned, how do we counsel executives, C-suite, and business leaders on AI strategy? And what they can buy into, for their workforce.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's a great question. And Andrew briefly touched on, we have a couple accelerators, Spark and Scope, that we take into consideration of the workforce impact, right? So this has to be done before you even roll out an AI roadmap. That means it's a design issue. It's not a communication issue. So according to McKinsey, 70% of the digital transformation project out there fail because of people's resistance. When you take that into account, when you design something, you take into account and consideration of what the people need, right? The people in your company, the employees who are affected. So you design at the beginning to make sure that, in this case, is their job going to be displaced? Do they need to be reskilled? Or is the workflow really helping them? So it's not a communication issue. It's really totally a design issue. And then when you do communicate, you already taking into consideration what they have to say about the design, right? And you don't communicate about efficiency. You communicate about how you actually would gain time to do what would be of value to you and would be of value to the company. So instead of focusing on efficiency, productivity, that's very, that create a high anxiety among the employees. You actually put them in the right psychological landing by saying, well, this will produce a lot of value to you, help you in doing better work and more interesting work. So I think that's really important to really put your optics in design versus just communication.
Yeah. In the pro-site change management approach, they use the ADKAR model, which is awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And the most important one, which is also the most neglected, is the D for desire, which is communicating to people what's in it for them in the change. And so your point is beautifully made, that they have to be included in that design so that they feel connected to it, so that they see themselves in the roadmap, not just tools. Yeah, love it.
I had an old boss who, this is many years ago when I was right out of college. I walked into my boss's office and he had this big giant sign on his wall. And the sign said, people support the things they help create. And, obviously we may have all heard that or whatever, but he really kind of lived that. And I was thinking about that, in terms of, our topic today. And I was thinking, well, suppose I become more productive because my skills have been augmented with AI. Well, most companies would say, great, good job. You'll get a little bonus star at the end of the year. Well, I think, you companies might want to take it a little further and basically give you a cut of the productivity gain. If I generate a huge gain for a company, why don't you give me a cut? That certainly gets the employee bought in to the idea that they're really going to benefit from this as well. So the company wins, you win, and you have a lot of happy employees really pushing hard for you.
Yeah, or promote me to something which is more interesting, right? Now it become more like an AI strategist versus doing things, right? So I think there are a lot, and that's a really good thought, Mike. I think there are a lot of things that companies need to really reframe and rethink about what they should be doing with this AI transformation. Yeah, from the workforce deployment, workforce management perspective.
Cecilia, I think if we look at over the next couple of years, you're already seeing people now, they're looking at how does AI affect or impact task level changes, and it's going to expand, and then in 3 years from now we'll be looking at how does it change roles, what roles are influenced or adjusted, and then it'll be functions within a business that are reformed. And yeah, you're spot on. And the time to think about it, though, plan for it, is now. That's the old best time to plant a shade tree is either 20 years ago or today. So yeah.
Another study actually indicated that people engage in AI type of job, they make a lot more money, 100% more than people do not, right? So there are a lot of positives from it, but the thing is, like I said earlier, the framing of the communication message rather than focusing on the efficiency that that potentially could replace my job is how do you actually improve the quality of life? How do you improve their productivity and that they can do more interesting things? How does it improve your salary, right? If you engage into more AI type of work. Yeah. So I think there are a lot of positive things. I think our leaders need to step up.
Active and visible sponsorship. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this also feeds more background data, if you will, into Andrew's previous comment about how the technology is the easy part, right? It's all these sort of human decisions that need to come into the conversation that really will talk about the success or lack of success about a lot of adoption. So we're going to be coming in for a landing here in just a second, but I did actually have a hypothetical that I wanted to kind of offer the team here, and These are always fun, but it is directly attached to what it is we're talking about. So here it is. If you had to give every company in America a piece of advice before they launched AI or their next AI initiative, what would that look like? What would that be?
Well, I'll start with that.
All right.
I would say AI transformation is workplace transformation,
Mhm.
which is kind of getting at the idea of focusing on people.
Yep.
And
I
also,
would say envision together first. So before you put any initiatives down on paper and start to plan your path forward, make sure that everybody feels involved and engaged in a change, not just having change pushed down from above. So take a multi-stakeholder, multidiscipline approach to it, and then look at each tier of the organization and how do your frontline workers feel connected to that change. And if they don't feel connected, that's when you'll lose them.
I would say AI governance and ethics really define what your company stands for, so you don't make mistakes like some of the big tech companies out there that employees walk out because they sign a contract with the Department of Defense or whatnot. Right?
Yep.
You really need to have some ethics in place and governance in place.
stellar answers, and I think that's a great place for us to maybe hit the pause button on the conversation, because I got to imagine there's a lot of people with these questions on their lips. And to that point, if anyone listening would like to continue this conversation with us, or even set up a free 30-minute consultation, you can visit us online, www.holistyxgroup.com. Let me try that again.
It's the Holistyx Group too.
Yeah, right.
Oh, okay.
www.theholistyxgroup.com, or you can email us at info@theholistyxgroup.com. And thanks to the panel here, thanks to the team, and for Cecilia Fong, for Andrew Wolf, and Mike Sternberg, and myself, Arthur Milano. We look forward to talking with you and seeing you again, maybe even here very soon. Thanks.
Be careful.